Hello, Foxy. It's your birthday. Not for real, just for play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Moana Nui podcast as we continue our celebration of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month. Before we get started, we always want to mahalo and thanks to our sponsor, Papa Ola Lokahi, serving the Hawaiian community and advocating for our health and well-being. We are honored tonight to explore Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, our organizations, and how we celebrate this particular month and the important work that our leaders are doing. So for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Moana McAdams, and I am the founder of the podcast, also a creator for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, editor and publisher for Wildcard Chronicles comic book series, cultural consultant for Disney's Lilo and Stitch comic book series. More books to come out later this year. If you guys haven't heard about it yet, take a look, check it out. Let me know what you guys think. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really glad I get to work on this project. But as you see, this wonderful, beautiful vahine to my left is my partner, Dana, and I'm so glad I get to spend an hour with her tonight to bring this episode to you all. So I'm going to hand it over to Dana.
Aloha, everyone. I am the other half of the Moana Nui podcast. I'm Dana, just like the other half of the show. We both have many hats. I do photography. I work with a lot of different conventions like MomoCon, DragonCon. I do voice acting and much, much more. But with this being Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I would like to kick off this episode in honor of this, the Moana Nui podcast. Well, we will highlight Native Hawaiians that are making a difference in the community. And tonight, we are proudly excited to recognize filmmaker Alaki Ntigan. He is the first Native Hawaiian to have a featured-length film premiered at the 2022 Sundance Film Festival. You can watch his film on Amazon, Peacock, Tubi TV, and Apple TV. So it was very cool. I was looking for people that are really being the first for Native Hawaiians. And when that popped up, I told Moana, hey, I would love to highlight some Hawaiians really doing making some difference and making some headways in places that we're not typically seen. So him being at the Sundance Film Festival is a huge accomplishment for a feature-length film. Definitely check that out for his film that is out there. You can watch it on any of those platforms. So with that, I am going to hand it back over to the yin to my yang, the Renaissance woman of this time, the woman who managed to put a week's worth of effort into 24 hours. I'm going to hand it over to the lovely, the beautiful Moana.
So tonight's episode is entitled Navigating NHPI Identity, and what does that inclusion look like in the AANHPI spaces. So tonight we are joined by three wonderful, powerful women leaders coming from different corners of our Pacific Islander community. And I'm excited to bring them on. We initially met two of them earlier this year at our Women of Color conference, which was a wonderful, powerful conference for our community. And I'm gracious for them agreeing to come on tonight. So the first person I would like to introduce is Lulu Wolfgram. She is a first generation Tongan American born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. She's the director for PIC2AR, Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resources Incorporated, Empowered Living Services, where she strives to lead and guide a team, providing direct services and resources, including peer-to-peer support groups to our communities, with a background in leadership and development, certified in various areas of business. Lulu uses both her lived experiences and hands-on learning opportunities to cultivate her knowledge within her culture. Community is truly her passion, doing youth and support, leading her to a decision made to step away from corporate America and engage in full-time community advocacy. She was recruited to PIC2AR as a community health worker, where she engulfed herself into various opportunities that allowed her to become a spearhead for her community. Today, she stands as a collaborator, working to build relationships that will continue to support her commitment to shaping and improving her community. Her purpose is to be a good ancestor by fearlessly living life, pursuing her goals and dreams, and setting an example of trust and love to prepare future generations to create a more loving mankind. So welcome, Lulu, to the podcast. Aloha.
Welcome, Lulu. And I have to add an extra piece. Lulu made at our conference these amazing ribbon lays that every single attendee wore through our conference. So she has an additional layer to that. And if you've watched the show, every person who's ever come on the show is not single layered. They have multiple layers to them, and Lulu is one of those.
Yes. That was such a thoughtful and beautiful touch. I still have mine, and I'm probably going to wear it to the ball next week. Our next guest is Josie Howard. She is the CEO. We are Oceania. She graduated from Xavier High School in Micronesia and attended the Community College of Micronesia. She later transferred to University of Hawaii at Hilo, studying biology, anthropology, and Pacific Islander studies. In 1989, she made her one of the first Micronesians migrating under the Compact of Free Association Treaty. At UH Hilo, her roles included student peer counselor, president of the International Students Association, a student researcher at the Minority Biomedical Research Program, a resident assistant in student housing, president of the Chuukese Students Association, as well as chairperson for the campus ministry. She has over 15 years servicing her community, with 8 years working with private agencies contracted by the Department of Health Waiver Program, 5 years in the Department of Education, and 5 years in program development, implementation, and piloting a one-stop center model. Her community involvement includes being the founder of the Young Voyagers, a youth club in media with Olelo, and the Micronesian Cultural Awareness Project. So welcome, Josie, to the show. There's so much more that she's done, and so we are also going to learn more as she joins us. Aloha, Josie.
Aloha, Moana and Dana.
Mahalo. And last but not least, the manavahine of our time. The reason that we are all sitting here right now, and that the reason that there's success across so many Native Hawaiian community organizations, is Sheri Daniels, CEO of Papa Ola Lokahi. She has led the organization for a number of years now, and she joins the ranks of Hawaiian leaders who continue to advocate and push for the uplifting and nurturing of the Native Hawaiian community and addressing our unique health needs in from a cultural lens, not from the typical Western way of health. And so just being a part of her community and seeing the different organizations and the unique ways that they support the community, Dana and I were certainly honored to be amongst this group who gets to showcase all of the wonderful work that these folks are doing. So welcome, Sheri, to the show. Aloha.
Aloha, Velina Maikako.
Okay, so such an exciting topic to really focus in on our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. In the intros, I gave a little bit about you guys and your organization, but I would like you guys to tell us from your perspective a little bit about you and your organization, and how does your organization serve the community? So Lulu, how about we start with you?
Yes, thank you. Malalale, everybody. And just want to first acknowledge both Moana, Dana, and of course, Sheri for the opportunity and the invite to be here today. Really looking forward to the conversation. So I am the director of Empowerment Living Services, which provides direct services and resources to community members. Of course, our main focus within PICTAR, Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resources Incorporated, is to create that actionability with the resources that are in the community for our Pacific Islanders. Because what we learned is that a lot of our Pacific Islanders didn't know that there was things out there that could be resourceful for them, right? And the organization actually started in violence prevention. It started through our men's group. Timi Teki Malohifo'o, who is one of the founders, he actually started the organization through Gava Talks, which is the men's group, in really talking about how do we prevent violence and talking to the men about that. And so that actually created this door of women coming in saying, hey, we want to have conversations too. And that's where the peer-to-peer support group started. And so that actually is how PICTAR became what they are today, was violence prevention. And now we use that as an opportunity to really look at overall health of all of our community members. So no matter what aspect they come in, whether it's for domestic violence or violence prevention, I should say, as a whole, or they're coming in for healthcare needs, or even they're coming in because they're looking for a business resource, or whatever the aspect is that they come in to PICTAR for services, we look at their overall health and try to connect them to the right resources that help them to strive. And so that's something that we're hoping that we can push out in the community, not only in Utah, but across the nation, because we have so many Pacific Islanders across the nation. And so many of them are just not seen. And we want to change that. So I'm excited to be here and really have this conversation because I think inclusion is important. We definitely want to be seen, but we also want to be seen as the individuals who we are and not just as entertainment, which is something that I've run into quite often. So that's a little bit about the organization I come from. And then, like you had introduced me, Moana, born and raised here in Salt Lake City, Utah, very much cultured in Tongan culture because my parents, when they migrated here, they had to figure things out. And they very much instilled in me all of the Tongan culture. So when it comes to all of the hierarchies and all of that great stuff, I feel like I'm very knowledgeable. But again, thank you for having me. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah, that's wonderful that your parents were able to perpetuate that and preserve that for you because that you don't always see that. And so I'm so excited to have you here to represent the Tongan community. Josie, would you mind going next? In a very similar way, very happy to have you here to represent the Micronesian community. Can you tell us more about yourself? And we are Oceania.
Definitely. And before I start, I just really want to acknowledge my Native Hawaiian sisters. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, giving us a space. I am honored to be a visitor living here in Hawaii on your land. And so with that said, I was born and raised on a small island known in Chuk in the Federated States of Micronesia. I come from a clan called Gofanu, which is actually originate in Yap, specifically Ifaluk Island. I came to Hawaii to further my education because there is no 4 years college or opportunity for higher education in Micronesia. And that's something that we struggle with until today. And I am married. I have 3 children. 2 of them are at UH Manoa. One of them is at Waipahu High School. I am currently living in of Manana, which is today called Pearl City. And I've been in Hawaii for more than 30 years. So I co-found We Are Oceania, accidentally became the CEO. You know how that works, accidentally. And We Are Oceania's mission is to empower Micronesians to navigate success. And I think the key word is navigate. I come from a culture of navigation and framework of navigating, and that's how we see our world. And that's how we see outside. And it's so important that we have that framework of knowing our surrounding, knowing where we want to go, and understand how to do that, how to navigate. So the nature of my work is related to that. You mentioned about my experience in college. I always find myself helping others to acculturate or to become navigators, like to navigate not the ocean, but life. And so we are Oceania is really like a one-stop center where we bring all the services, modeling a canoe house where when people first come to our islands, they come to the canoe house. And at the canoe house, you get to meet the people and align yourself with your genealogy. And if you do not have any relatives or any genealogy connection, you are the guest of the chief or the person who takes care of everyone on the island. And that's how that whole framework of We Are Oceania is like the place where when our people come to Hawaii, they know where to go so that they can learn, connect, and then access the resources or learn how to navigate this new system in Hawaii. It's very different from our system. I'm very happy and excited to be here and to be part of this conversation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
That's wonderful, Josie. I love how you tied it to the canoe house because I think that's something that a lot of Pacific Islanders can relate to. Of course, the navigation piece that's at the core of all of us. Mahalo for sharing that. Aloha, Susie, joining us in the comments, CEO of Pictar. Good to see you. Sheri, tell us a little bit about yourself and Papa Ola Lokahi and your role in the Hawaiian community.
I want to make sure I give enough time for my Pacific Islander sisters because I think I've been on a couple podcasts, so I think people know who I am. Papa Ola Lokahi is the Native Hawaiian Health Board. Our kuleana or responsibility is to uplift raise the health status of Native Hawaiians, not only in Hawaii, but across the U.S. And we do that in a multitude of ways, but probably the most, I think, what has made us who we are in the last decade or so has been our community work and really creating space for community to thrive or work towards thriving. That for us, it's not about us. It's about the others, the collective. And so really being very intentional on the work that we do to push and advocate at the upper levels so that our communities get the resources, get the waters to grow and flourish. And that's really what for POL, that's what we do is we advocate for those that might not have voice yet, but we're also helping folks find their voice in ways that make sense for them. And I think hearing both Josie and Lulu talk about that finding, not tokenizing us, but finding really like truly including us, not only in meaningful ways, but in value added ways, reciprocating both, right? So that it's not, I'm just not giving you what I got because what I got's pretty awesome, but I'm waiting to see what you're going to reciprocate back with me. That it's not, I'm not giving up the goodies all at once. But I think especially for our Pacific Islander cousins that making sure they understand the spaces too, and that we can work together in tandem, or I recognize that we never all going to be on the same road. But if we all know Lulu and Josie we all have the same outcome, I might have to stop at the grocery store, put gas in my car, go around the way to get to that point. But I know that at the end, going to have people waiting for us. And I think really that's for POL, that's really important. That we're not going to do the things that have been done to us through colonization and oppression, that we're going to show that there is a different way that we behave, that we know what our community needs. We know how to do it. We know how to deal with how our community navigates the issues that we have. None of our communities are perfect. We disagree plenty. We hard hit plenty times too. But at the end of the day, we all are committed to our community. And I think we got to stay true to that. And I hope that's what POL does, is allow us and our Native Hawaiians and our Pacific Islanders and other communities to stay true to themselves. And so, yeah, why I'm here, I think.
Mahalo nui. We are so happy that you are here. Alrighty. So we are celebrating AANHPI month. And I don't know about you guys, this was a mouthful, that whole acronym thing. For those who have never heard the term, it was I guess it started as a week and then it got expanded into a month. I don't know about you guys, but I celebrate being a Hawaiian every day of the year. But I appreciate that there is a month where, we have our special attention.
I have a lot of 2 cents comments on that, but
okay. Well, let's just go with that. Go, Sheri.
let's just go. Yeah, I agree with you that I appreciate recognition of a month, but I think all of us can agree we are who we are 24/7, 365, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what space, where we are, who we are, and that's not going to change. But I also really strongly believe that I'm sure there's a background on how we got included in this, but I think from our communities, there's other months that are just as important or probably more meaningful. We have Olelo Hawaii month, which is February, but we recognize our national days of, right? La Ho'iho'i'ea, La Ku'oko'a. And so, yes, I'm appreciative that we get an opportunity, but I often wonder when I see things that it's still very non-inclusive of us.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it feels like we are like added on because somehow somebody went, "Oh, that's right. Let's don't forget the PI." And I say that because I still hear AAPI all the time. And I get it and I understand, but I'm not included. NHs aren't included when you don't put our 2 letters, and not that 2 letters make a difference, but to some it does. And I think the misconception is that we get as much opportunity to be uplifted. And I think in some spaces, yes, but not in all spaces. And I think that's what we got to say is we shouldn't be just celebrating in May. It should be all the time, right? That should be what it is. So that's just that's my 2 cents to kick us off in this kind of conversation.
Mahalo.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on that as well, because I agree with Sheri. And I think one of the things that I look at when I think of AANHPI, I feel like as Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, we are looked at infrequently. That's the word I would use, is infrequent. You talked about it at the beginning of the introductions, and not that I have anything against our Asian American cousins, okay? But there's a lot of recognition for their ancestors, and there's very little for ours. And so that for me is a big conflict, even because I do a lot of research because I want to teach the youth about how this all came to be. And if you really look in history, they didn't even really acknowledge islanders in any way until the 19th century. And then as more and more of our islanders, our Pacific Islanders, migrated and Hawaii was taken over, then they decided, we should probably acknowledge the 2. And it was actually, her name was Jenny, I want to say Jenny Jean. I need to look up her name real quick, but I know I have her name. She was the one that was pushing for the acknowledgement of May month, right? And it wasn't until 1990 or something like that she made it happen. Jeannie Jew, sorry, that was her name, Jeannie Jew. And she just said, Asians and Pacifica, people of the Pacifica. And it to me is, so you just decided, let's just throw them in because they come from the same kind of vicinity of the same area, right? So that for me is an issue. And I feel like the way the census, the government looks at it, is they've taken like 50 different ethnicities and put them together and said, you guys are the same category. And that to me is an issue that I think needs to be addressed. And also to the point that Sheri made, we should be acknowledging our ancestors every day. Like here in Utah, August is important to us because we actually were able to get the governor to acknowledge it as the Pacific Islander Heritage Month here in Utah. And so throughout that month, we have many activities that share our culture to our community. And I do see value in the point that Native Hawaiians also need to be acknowledged because of what they went through, right? It's the same thing that we see historically across the world. So much colonization, and to not include Native Hawaiian in those titles of AANHPI, as some people do when they just say AAPI, is not acknowledging ancestors. And for me, it's very important that we acknowledge all of our ancestors because you're all my cousins. That's the reality. That's how I see it. Sorry to jump in, Moana. I wanted to continue on what Sheri was saying because I totally agree. And I just have these different perspectives of like, how come I can't find this information in history of like when they actually decided to acknowledge us? And yes, we are still fairly new here, but our ancestors that we're developing, our ancestors in training need to know this.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, how do they know who they are? How do they find their own identities?
Absolutely. Josie, would you like to build onto this particular point?
Definitely. There's a lot of thoughts in my head as I'm listening to Sheri and Lulu. They're also shaping what I'm thinking about. And so maybe I will start here where I totally agree with them that that acronym a lot of the times, and if Sheri can feel it and Lulu can feel it, imagine me feeling the PI. I feel the coconut stick, and I'm at the very tip of that. That I'm like almost just fall off, or like maybe nobody even notice. So I do feel very small when it comes to that identity or that grouping. But as we talk about history, I came from an upbringing that it's really living off the land and living according to the way we live. Like I never knew the world before I step out of that island. So my knowing is our way, and who I am. So this is why I see it differently, where if you notice the name, we are Oceania, it is a naming that relies on the knowledge and the wisdom of our ancestors. I use the word Oceania because it is one of our scholars, Pacific Island scholars, who found that word or who argue the naming of the Pacific as was named by a Westerner, not one of us. But Oceania is our indigenous way we look at our ocean. And I look at it, and when we talk about people, we always say Rafanier and Rewan. Rafanier are all of us Pacific Islanders, so people of Oceania. Rewan are people that are white skin and they're from up there, and I guess they're from the continent. So that's my world that I grew up in, and that's how I also see the world. I do see a world of unbalancedness and a world of unfairness. When I see this acronym, I also think about SAID, in how there is that others, us and the others in anthropology or Pacific Island studies. You study SAID and how the Orient is referring to people were included in that. But even in that, like when I'm studying that, I don't feel like I was part of that, but I know that I'm on that side of the world. I think what I'm really interested in is creating and shifting this framing and this world to recognize who we are. And we have to create that. We cannot depend on others to do that anymore. We have to create it. And part of that is coming together as one people and creating that so that people can see us.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And working together to reinforce these messages and these values from the different aspects that we come at this from. Yeah, absolutely. Even me, myself, as a Native Hawaiian, as a Pacific Islander, just in recent years, in the starting of this podcast, I have also learned about like the nuances of Micronesian culture and the Chukis and how there are like different subcultures and subgroups in there too. That's one of the things I love about engaging in these conversations and talking to our community more, because I feel like we're also learning more about each other, knowledge that has been erased, gatekept, just all the things that colonization does to separate us from one another. So I really appreciate you guys coming into this space and helping us to learn too. So with that said, could you share some of your personal experiences or observations regarding the challenges that your particular community faces finding inclusion? We talked a little bit about your individual challenges, but what are some of the things that you have observed more broadly from your community? Lulu, just start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, one of the biggest struggles that I see for our oceanic people, I think I like referring to that, is here in Utah, everyone works in silos. And I can't understand that. Like, why are we working so hard individually instead of collectively? Why can't we come together? We all are the people of the ocean, right? Oceanic community, I should say. And a lot of times, like, it's almost like there's like competitions, or there's our own community is becoming our own barrier. Some people are wanting to be the first to do things. Some people are wanting to be the ones that are known for something that's being done. But the true value for us to be included is to come together and be collective and actually be seen as a whole, representing our oceanic community, right? That's where, for me, I feel like there needs to be more work done within our own community. Because if we keep working in these silos, we're never going to build that future that our youth need. And for me, that's so important. That's where my passion lies, is our youth. And I don't want our cultures to be lost, our identities to be lost because we're working in these silos. Instead, we should be collectively teaching our youth about the various islands that we come from, the various ancestors we come from, the different things that we did to navigate the seas and be here on this continent, here in the US, right? For me, I think just looking at not only the fact that we aren't seen by others, but within our own communities, we need to work on that. We need to be more engaged so that we are collectively, collaboratively working towards that goal and making sure that we're acknowledged.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that up, because I see that too. Unfortunately, I cannot help but notice the growing divide even within the Kanaka Maoli community. Oh, you're not in Hawaii anymore. You're in the diaspora. You're in fake Hawaiian. Okay? I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys. That's how deep that colonizer mindset is, right? That's the ultimate goal, right? Is to separate us from one another. Because when we're united, we are a powerful force. So definitely appreciate that. Josie, you want to give your thoughts on this particular topic?
Yes, definitely. I see three things, like three memories that pop up when you ask this question. One was when I was in school, and this is academia, in the world of academia. I was a student, graduate student at the Swiss Center, and I was so naive. And I remember our very first day, our orientation day, we all had to put like a thumbtack on the island that you come from. There was a map, and everybody has to nail their island so that everybody else can see. We all got up and put our nails on the map, and we sat back down, and I look at the map, and I noticed there was a lot of nails in the Asian area, in the European area, and there was like few dots in the Pacific, including Hawaii. So that was my first observation. And then throughout the semester, and I was in the program for 1 year or 2 years, throughout the first year, I observed that the topics of conversation or discussion were mostly about the Asian countries. And so I started to think, like, why we haven't talked about me? Like, why haven't we talked about affairs or issues that is facing Pacific Islanders, or like Pacific Islanders, or a tuna or nuclear testing, that kind of stuff. I'm thinking those are important enough topics, but we never talk about it. And so one day the president came in to meet with us, and I stupidly asked the question, like, why isn't that we never talk about the Pacific Island, but we only talk about Asia and the other countries like Europe? Is it because we're less important, or because there's just few of us on that map? That was my question. When I walk out of that room, one of my Samoan brother came up to me and he goes, "Whoa, Josie, you were so brave to ask that question." He didn't realize that I was so stupid to ask the question. I didn't those were my discovery. Those were my learning. And the second thing was my first semester. And in a class, I had a Native Hawaiian student, a Filipino boy who was raised in the mainland. And there was a number of us, like indigenous people. My very first paper came out, and the instructor wrote on it, said, this is not a graduate writing level, and you will never pass this class. Immediately I thought, because I am a Pacific Islander, because I am a Micronesian, because I come from a poor educational background that I will never make it through graduate school. But I made it. But what happened was I found comfort in the other students, the indigenous students. We all got together. We share our experience. We had similar experience. And this is another discovery. This is another moment that I realized that I was small and that the world that we live in don't recognize who we are. So I'm like, okay, this is what really motivates me to do the work that I do today. And my goal is that one day we will be recognized. Maybe not in my lifetime, but in our children's lifetime. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And it's not absolutely not a stupid question. It takes a lot of bravery to ask those types of questions, but it's actually a very fair question given that it's a university in a Pacific Islander nation. Why are we not centering our people and the focus is always external? That's always my question. And I struggle with this even in the work that I do creatively and the storytelling. Like, I'm always trying to shift it. Like, great, Hawaii's the setting. Boom, let's talk more about the Hawaiians though. Yeah, I love that it's in our island, but I want to talk more about the issues that are being faced in this story. Let's put some depth to it because I think it's really important. It's hard work though to do it because everybody's, what you talking about? I remember in January, I went up to New York City for the release of the first issue of Lilo and Stitch. And we did a signing at one of the biggest comic shops up in the city. And one of the fans that came to visit us, they were like, "You're the first Pacific Islander I've ever met. I don't even know what a Pacific Islander looks like." And so that was very impactful for me. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, I'm so honored to be the first one. I hope you meet so many more and have a better appreciation of our culture. Like, through this IP, please let us know what you think, engage with us. Like, I'm online, feel free to reach out. But yeah, it's super important to really center it on the people within our community. Sheri, I know you have thoughts over there. Let's go to you for this. Oh, you muted.
You think I would learn already to unmute? I have two. I think for me, I was at a conference and I don't know about other people listening in, but I always scan for if I see NHPI, AANHPI stuff, I scan. Oh, I'm going to go to that one. And so I go to this presentation and it's about colonization in our AANHPI community, something like that. So I was like, oh, right, I want to go. And the whole talk was about the impact different AA communities had faced in history, all their different challenges. And I sat there and this person was from Hawaii, not Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, grew up in Hawaii. And so I was excited. Maybe there's going to be some opportunity to share our history a little bit. And there was nothing. And so I sat there and I'm thinking, oh, you could have talked about, like Josie said, the bombing. You could have talked about the overthrow. You could have talked about things that you can easily Google, right? And I thought, man, that was probably the first time I was very irritated. And I went and I found the speaker, like when they were done, like they're beelining it out the door. I got up and I went and I said, excuse me, I'm from Hawaii. It's really great. You grew up in Hawaii, but I was just wondering about some of these other, like being able to include some of our NHPI, like moments in history kind of thing, because you had a room of people, like you had a captive audience. You could have used your time to put others on the radar. And that was pre-COVID. That was right before COVID. And then I realized during COVID, so number two is during COVID and still yet, it bugs me to no end when I see webinars or Zooms or even conferences that have us. And then I look at the pictures and I understand you cannot look by somebody to go, oh, they're Tongan or they're Samoan or they're Hawaiian or they're Chuukese. You can't do by just visual. But when they really don't look like us, but yet they're going to talk about us. Or if you're not going to talk about us, then don't include us in the title. It's okay. We won't be offended. Because I think for many of us, I'm looking for spaces where I can learn more about us and hear how we're being described too. And so then I feel like I'm this gatekeeper and I'm like emailing people like, hey, do you have an NHPI person who's talking at this webinar? Oh no, would it be too much to take off that and just go with what you got? Just don't need to include us because you think you have to. Include us because we bring value. And I think that's the observation that just gets to me because it still happens. I know for me, I'm not going to include other communities if our talk is about NH stuff. I think that's rude. That's insultive and offensive. Please don't do that because you give an impression to the community that you know us, that somehow putting our name on your presentation, it's almost like for some folks, that's like this, oh, you've gotten vetted by them? Oh, good. Then we're going to contact you and you can be the spokesperson for these communities. And no, that's not cool. And so I think in some spaces, I observe that we use our colonizing behavior on each other. Not only within our own smaller communities, but within our AANHPI spaces. And it's like, why you got to do that for? So I think I found my voice over time to just ask Moana, why you have to do that for? You get plenty space to play. Your yard big. You get plenty. You don't need to come in and come up in my business and up in my space. Ask me and I'll open it up for you and we can work together, but don't take that away from me. And I think that's for me, some of those observations that continue today, right? Even when told, they just go to somebody else to hear the okayness of it. No, like this is a bigger question. Like your intentionality is important. Just because I bring it up to you, don't dismiss me and then go to another colleague because they're going to tell you what you want to hear. And so I think it's okay to stand firm in that belief and maybe recognize and, for me, understand that they are going to go to others in our community. And some others might let them in, and that's okay. I can know I did what felt right for me and that I didn't sell my people up the river. That's, I think, really important in how we behave and what we perpetuate and protect.
I totally agree with what you're saying. And it is important to stand firm in that. Yeah, I also have similar irritations when I see titles that are misleading, specifically in AANHPI, because I'm always looking, I'm scanning. I think Oretta, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, Oretta, when there's like AANHPI conference or presentation or whatever it might be, I'm scanning. I'm like, okay, I don't see any PIs.
And you know what? I don't think people recognize that we talk to each other.
Right.
And I don't think people, I don't know. Because if I see something that maybe might have I might call Josie and say, hey, Josie, are you guys part of this? Or even if it's somebody maybe I don't necessarily agree with or we've disagreed, I'm going to call and say, hey, do you know they're throwing out your name? Is that because I get people calling me all the time. Hey, did you guys sign on to this? Are you guys part of this? And I appreciate that because we can't be everywhere. Our drones are not everywhere and catching things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's very central to our culture is protecting, right? Okay, what they said? Who's saying this? But I feel like that's important to community accountability, not just to protect internally, but to continue to educate others that it's not right for you to exploit us too. And so while we're on this topic, I'm going to continue it. And let's talk about, we talked a little bit about funding. We have the White House initiative, right, for AANHPI. And while that's great recognition for our community, when I think about funding though, like where's the funding really going? Is it getting to the NHPI portion of the community? Because maybe that's why when you look at all of these different organizations, like where is the NHPI? We must not be getting funding because otherwise we would see more of our community organizations in these spaces. So I'm curious, what are you all's thought from your community organization perspective or the people and partners that you work with? Is funding equitable? How can we help to change that narrative and inform our decision makers and give them the data? Data disaggregation is a big thing too. So I'm curious to hear thoughts on that. Lulu.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to start off by just shouting out Oretta and Susie. They're my sisters and my bosses and my affiliates that we are like constantly in the community trying to make things happen. And the reason why I wanted to acknowledge both of them is because I myself have not experienced this directly, but in conversations that we talk about with funding, there have been so many nations where our Asian American community is saying, we are using this funding to improve like the overall health of our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders. And then when you talk to them, truly talk to them and find out or look at data that they provide, you're like, oh, you have one Native Hawaiian. So how can you say that you're using this funding for our community? That unfortunately is happening too often. And I believe that we as the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, Oceania community, we need to be more visible in saying, hey, if that funding is intended for our community, then we need to be a part of whatever it is that's happening. We need to be a part of the planning. We need to be a part of the outcomes. And I don't think that, let's be real, there are some organizations that there are ill intentions, that they're saying it because they know they're going to get a bigger chunk of the change. But there are organizations who truly do want to be engaged with getting Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders more opportunities, more resources, more funding, but they don't know where to look. And that's where, again, we need to be seen. Our community needs to be more engaged in having our voices being heard, telling our stories, making sure that we are the ones getting the funding. We are the ones that are getting that opportunity to provide those resources to our community. Because even right now, we're looking at new funding, trying to get new opportunities so we can do some other things outside of the work that we're already doing. There's so many grants out there that are being provided for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. And then when I see the awardees, it makes me think, okay, so what do they say? They have one person in their organization that represents our whole community? How is that fair? So for me, I have a struggle with how funds are being used, how funds are being actually given to the right communities. And again, Sheri just said it. Don't use our name if we're not actually being used in outcomes and the actual reward of getting these funding opportunities. Like I said, I myself have not experienced it, but because of what I've seen through the conversations that we have as leaders, trying to figure out how do we get into these spaces. And the biggest thing I think that we need to do is go knocking on those doors and saying, hey, I see that you went for funding for this, and that includes my community. So how do I get a piece of that pie? Because I'm hungry too. I'm sorry, but we like to eat too. So that's my perspective. Like I said, I haven't personally experienced it, but just seeing that in the work that we do as leaders, it's heartbreaking.
Mahalo. Josie, how about you?
Yeah, I see the same thing. I see that the way funding is today, it reflects the systemic discrimination. And part of that is, I feel like there's a need. Like you ask about how do we improve this? I think this lack of not knowing and or maybe don't care about understanding each other's community. What is this community? What is the culture? What is the number of people? I think all of this, it's continue to push or continue to support the systemic discrimination that is already exists. And I think our effort in trying to lift up the voice of our community and tell them, you know what, we may be small, but we have more challenges. And COVID did that for us, Pacific Islanders. And I think for the longest time, we never seen this disaggregated data. And so with that, and those are the systemic problems and systemic issues that we correct in order to change things around. And I think we're moving closer, but there's still more work to do. And part of those works is understanding each other's culture, understanding each other's challenges, understanding each other's asset and contributions. And what else was I going to say? Sorry, I just lost my thoughts. But really building relationship. And it's about building relationship. we're talking about the systems, we're talking about funding, but when we really look at what's happening, it's about relationship too. It's about who you know. And we're like so small, like ants. We get stepped over by the elephants and by the lions and by those bigger animals. And I'm just using those as metaphor of that. I don't think size should be the factor. I think we should look at the needs and the value of people. And that as long as we are human being, we breathe, we have blood just like anybody else. Our challenges, our issues should be just as relevant as anybody else. And that if we look through the eyes of equity, that we should all be elevated at the same level, no matter what size of our community, how many people are educated in our community, how many people have business, we should all be the same if that's how the system operates. So the system has to change.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, so couple things. I think this lumped funding needs to go. If you're going to fund AA, great. You're going to fund NH, great. You fund PIs. Because when you lump us all together and you give us $2, then we got to figure out how that splits. And then that creates this hoarding mentality, this lack of collaboration environment, because we're all jockeying for $2. But what if I gave $2 to the AAs, $2 to the Hawaiians, $2 to the Pacific Islanders? And within their community, like Lulu said, hey, we got to work together, that they can figure out what works best. But that means that there is some trust, that we're trusted. We're not treated less than an equitable partner. And that's also part of the systemic continued oppression is we're going to give you $2 for the three groups and you guys figure it out. What we don't know is the bag that they're still holding had $6, but they're going to give out $2. And we're going to see how you guys do it. Creates division and it creates a sense of mistrust and divisiveness. And then what happens is, right, and Josie's right, it's about trust. When we have somebody who says, you know what, it didn't work. We see you giving these resources in areas that don't make sense for our community, doesn't meet what our needs are. And then the resource holders get amnesia and they go, oh, what do you mean? Oh, no, we did it this way. And it's, no, you never. You gave to your friends because they knew what to tell you and they told the line, and you're not giving it to those organizations that question, that have integrity, that go, no, this is not accurate. We're going to go to the people who continue to toe the line of inequity and BS, I'm going to call that, because that's how the machine works. And I think during COVID, we saw opportunity where things were relaxed, where we could see more monies flowing in. People could have more control on what that looked like for their communities. It was abundance, and organizations could do good work. We saw that. But now what we're seeing is this pullback of all of those things. And like Josie said, it's systemic racism at the core. But also we're seeing that community, right? You get one person, that's the community. So everybody's saying, oh, we're part of this community because one person is, or one Native Hawaiian is on a board. So now they get to claim that they know Native Hawaiian issues. No, you don't. One Hawaiian on your board does not make you the all-knowing. But that's the game that gets played, that we're too small. There's too little data. Oh no, we can't disaggregate, because then you would have the power to tell your story and to change your narrative. It's all this buts and there's no action. And it's almost stop appeasing me and show me, don't tell me. Because I think for many of our communities and our organizations, we have to show. You want the money, you show us what you're doing. We want you to collect all these 100 data points on this little $5,000 grant. And you're like, that's a whole body to do all of that. Why don't we just give it? And they tell us basically what are the services they're doing and the people they serve, and how did it make a difference? Or how do they need to pivot? Why do we make it so complicated for especially the small organizations that just want to do good work. Big ones, they have the infrastructure, they have this machine that can. And so I think for me, there should be separate pots for each of our clusterings. I think the other thing is the feds, when they put out money to the states, they give the states the power to determine how they're distributing the monies and all that. If you're using our data, states, then you need to have a carve out to our people, to our communities, that of this money, so much percentage is to organizations that are serving our people. And it has to be like truly show us that your organization is either mission focused in that area, or the numbers in your program show that there's a higher population that's being served. But the states don't, because that's their sense of control. Just like how we don't trust them, it's because you're doing shenanigans. You're doing sneaky stuff. And when we call you out on it, you get all, and then you cut us off at the knees and you go, I'm not gonna play with Sheri anymore. And they just work around us. And I think that's just when, like Josie said, when you're pushing against the system that's racist, that's what happens, right? That's the behavior is we're going to eliminate you and keep on going, because people get scared. And a lot of our other partners get scared, right? They start going, we better get back in line. We better be the sheep and get back in line, because we don't want to lose the resources. But I gotta believe that NHPIs especially are a hot commodity, because there is something about us that it is not found anywhere. And there is no recipe out there. And people want us in a million ways because they want to figure out the recipe. And they're not going, because for me, their intention is dirty and it's pilau, and you're not going. And I think that's the thing is we gotta stay true to what our community needs. And at the end of the day, the ones who are going to stay is the community. The community going to do what they have to do, regardless if they get the money. Is awesome. They need it. But right, the community going to feed themselves. Even if Auntie gonna take less, she's going to make sure everybody is fed. We don't want to see that. We want to say, hey, here you go. Feed all you need to. But at the end of the day, community just going to go, we know that already. We told you nothing going to change. But I think we got to stay on top of those resource makers, even if you aren't appreciated by them or you're pushed out of the way, your community not pushing you out. That's why you stay, and that's why you do that. So I think in terms of money-wise, there is not enough money, but I think it's more than just money. It's about resources, even time, right? How do we have opportunities for our community to thrive, for our leaders to be able to gain access to things to improve their skills? All of those things. How do we create pathways for our people, for our workforce? All of those things that I think are resources too, right? How do we gain control of our resources and have, I think, true governance, true self-determination, all of those really fancy sovereign words. How do we really get that in a space that does not want that to be successful?
That's a great question. One, I know we're going to continue to ponder as we pursue this work. Great, wonderful, and powerful commentary there. And that's so true. Like Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, Oceanic peoples, we just got the special sauce. And I love our community so much because no matter what they throw at us, we're still here. We are still here. We're going to figure it out. We know how to rub some pennies together and make do with what we do, because our people are very resourceful despite lack of resources. And I think that is where a lot of the strength lies in our community and our ability to collaborate despite the adversities that we face. We get aloha shoyu, with some chili pepper water on top. As we said, like we're over our hour. So before we end though, how's about we end on a positive note? Let's pick one person, organization, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander that you feel is doing wonderful work in the community. Let's shout them out, give them space before we close out. And yeah, so let us know the person or the community, and then also where we can find your organization to learn more about the work that you guys are doing. Lulu, how about we start with you?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out Oretta, especially because she's been steadily watching with us and being engaged in the conversation. Oretta has been an advocate, not only here in Utah, but in Hawaii and also in other states for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders to truly get the resources and the opportunities. And Oretta has been a part of PICTAR since it started, but became an actual staff member just recently within the last year. And she has come into a space where she is finding ways for us to be more collaborative and collective with the other organizations that are here based in Utah, and also organizations across the states, because she has those relationships. And I will honestly say, and Oretta, I'm not saying this just because I'm online, but she's my hero. I want to be like her. I want to be like her and Susie and really get those relationships, because those are what are key. Those are some of the things that all of us have said is the relationships that we build will allow us the opportunities to do more for our communities. I think if we just come together and be more collective as a community, and really represent who we are, represent our ancestors, that's truly going to help us to get that step up on being able to do more and being able to be seen. As far as like getting in contact with me, my direct email is lulu at pictar, PAIK, the number 2AR.org. And that's actually our website as well, pictar.org. We're also found on both Facebook and Instagram under Pictar. All that information, I could just type it into the chat and then we can have it posted on the page. But yeah, we would love to hear from not only local people here in Utah, but everyone across the nation, like all of our Pacific Islanders, Native Hawaiians, Oceanic people. Let's come together like this. Let's make this something that we make a priority, is that we create our relationships across the different states and truly make our ancestors proud.
Oh,
Thank
100%.
you.
Yes. Prioritize. Love that word. Josie, how about you?
Okay, so I'm going to stay true to who I am, and I am going to recognize, shout out to everyone in the Native Hawaiian Pacific Island community that have really stepped up and had to those before us that had paved the road. And for us currently who are doing this work to bring equity for our community and to our children who will be leading tomorrow. And I also want to recognize our other AA organizations that have been supportive to the work that we do and have done their part in helping us reach equity in our AANHPI community. And to reach me, very easy, contact at We Are Oceania, or you can visit our website at www.weareoceania.org. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Mahalo, Josie. Sheri?
Okay, so for me, similar to Josie, way too much people to thank. I have a lot of people that I fan crush on, but I think there's so much good work, so many community from big to small, everything in between. So in Hawaii, out of Hawaii, everywhere. So I want to shout out, if you are NHPI, if you're an ally, mahalo, 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 because the work continues. There's that. papaolalokahi.org, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website. And you can find out how to reach me there. I do want to put in a plug. If anybody on the call, Native Hawaiians, I'm doing a kahea out. We're going to be doing a road tour 24, we're calling it. More info to come. But it's really an opportunity for me to sit with people across the country and talk story. Just talk about what it means to be Hawaiian, what is the struggles, what's the successes. That's it. In small groups, 2 people, 3 people, no more than 8. Grab coffee, grab some food, sit at a beach park. We are going to all 50 states because I think that shows that we want to hear that our NH voices matter. So if you guys know NHs anywhere in the country, I'm looking for those obscure states like Delaware, New Hampshire, that kind. Think at Hawaiians, but there's Hawaiians in all 50 states. That is what I'm looking for. So if you know where I can find some, let me know, please.
I love it. Road tour. Let's go. Mahalo, Sheri. So with that said, I just want to thank you all again for sharing your time, energy, perspectives, value, mana'o, and prioritizing this time for our community and being persistent and resilient in this work, because it does take dedication, energy, all of those things, especially when we are up against the adversities and the challenges that we do face. So love having these conversations, especially because it seems to be, I don't know why, we don't do this intentionally, but it's always wahine who are like going up. And Lulu, maybe we can talk story with some folks from your organization, the gentlemen who do kava talks, because I did see some of their things. I think when I first met Susie and was learning more about Pictar, and I had checked out some of the podcast episodes of that. With that said, check out Kava Talks, get that male perspective too, because I think it's important. There are some issues in our community that we tend to shy away from, but I think having those opportunities to open it up and have very open, frank, and understanding in those conversations, not judging, so that our men can feel protected in a different way and supported by the wahine who are around them and are a part of their lives as well. So yeah, Dana, anything else that you want to add before we close out for tonight?
For those that are watching, if you want us to continue this conversation, or especially our panelists, because I know we haven't even gotten into the meat of this conversation yet. Me and Moana knows a lot of these conversations. We know we're going to have a part 2, part 3. So we definitely have to figure that out. But especially those that are tuning in, if there's a topic that we haven't tackled yet on the show and you would like for us to discuss, please message us either through any of our social media messages through there, or you can email us at Moana Nui podcast as one word @gmail.com. And we're definitely open to other topics, especially topics that affect the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community. I know Moana didn't even touch all the questions she came up with tonight. So we definitely have to continue this conversation, because Moana knows offline, this is very close to me also, because it's a battle I fight within corporate America with all the companies I've ever worked for, because I constantly for the longest up until President Biden came into office, it was just AAPI. And then when Biden came into office, they updated it to include us into the month that we're seeing. But I still see places leaving the NH out of the month, whether it's they just put AAPI or they just leave us out totally. And me and Moana both be looking like, who's on that panel? There's one Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian on that panel. But we see that it's always very strong with, like you said, of our Asian brothers and sisters, but we're out there too. We have representation. I'm very proud and excited that at my company, our chief human resource officer is a Native Hawaiian. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, what? Which made me want to join this company. So proud to be in this company, because I don't see that in Fortune 500 companies, seeing one of us in that C-suite. But seeing that diverse C-suite in a 150 plus year old company is very rare and far between. But it's still a battle I'm seeing in a lot of organizations and things that we're part of. I'm like, you're saying you're supporting the NHPI, but where are we in the conversation? Where are we? So I definitely feel this is definitely multi-episode conversation with our panelists, and probably even bringing other panelists on, because there's probably other perspectives of other NHPI communities, representatives that are out there watching that could also give us other perspectives that haven't come onto our show. So if you're interested, as you see, it's a very casual conversation. The hour goes by quickly. So message us, because we have a lot of people like, I would like to, but, and it's just, you'll see it. The hour goes by very quickly, and the engagement is great with the panelists that we always put together. Definitely reach out to us. We're always looking for more people, and definitely reach out to Sheri, especially as she's doing this tour. We want to hit those states because trust and believe, everywhere I go, I'm looking like,
Where they at? Where they at?
because even our CHRO, when she found out I was from Oahu, she was like, "You from Oahu?" And I was like, "Yeah." Which island you from? And she was excited because she's just like, whoa, one of us is, I'm talking to one of us. And for someone at that level to get excited too, it shows no matter your level, we're still trying to find us in the spaces we're in. And in this NHPI spaces, we have to find more of us because it seems like we're not always represented. So that's my piece.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our panelists. Everyone, please definitely reach out to these organizations, and especially if your company is one that has grants or support, please reach out to these wonderful people on our panel to give support, because as I said, funding, if we can't get it from the government, if your company does grants and sponsorships like that, connect them, because we want to make sure every company, the hot word is DEI. This is proof of DEI. Include more of that DEI into that mix for your company. So that's, I'm gonna get off my soapbox for a minute.
Well, mahalo, Dana. Mahalo, ladies. Always a pleasure to share space with all of you. Thank you to our audience, whether you're tuned in live or watching the recording. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us to hit 1,000 subscribers. That's our goal this year. We're making steady progress. So we appreciate everyone who has joined our va'a as we navigate this crazy world that we live in, and continue to find safe passage with our cousins and the relationships that we build. Mahalo nui, everyone. Take care. Until next time. Ahui ho.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the Native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, he was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.